Good morning, Ryan. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. Can you please let our listeners know who are you?
Hi there, my name is Dr. Ryan Kobrick. I'm an assistant professor at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in the Applied Aviation Sciences Department. And specifically within that department, I'm in the Spaceflight Operations program, which is a new upcoming program developed for undergraduates to give them a interdisciplinary feel for the industry. It's not your traditional engineering program. These are the people that are looking at positions that would occur after the design and build phase of a space mission, the ones that would be operating it for the lifetime, like the longer part of the lifetime. Also, in my spare time, I'm also the chairman and president of Yuris Night, which is a worldwide space celebration and brings people together around the world to celebrate the first human in space, Yuri Gagarin, and where our future in human spaceflight will take us next. As part of my duties or my activities here at Embry-Riddle, I'm also the principal investigator of the Spacesuit Utilization of Innovative Technology Laboratory, or SUIT Lab. Got to have a cool acronym if you're running a lab.
Yeah.
And within the lab, we do a lot of crazy and fun and cool activities, not just to give students hands-on experience, but also to contribute to industry and help them solve problems.
So, in the suit lab, are you trying to develop new technologies or spacesuit technologies that would be appropriate not only for the Mars mission, but also a mission similar to the International Space Station where they have to do spacewalks for maintenance? Are you
Mhm.
looking at doing different suits for different types of missions, or trying to develop one suit that is diverse enough for all types of missions?
Yeah, it's a great question. In terms of suits, technologies, and everything else, I kind of see our lab as the people who test and break things. We're not specifically looking at design, but by testing these suits, all different types of suits, both for IVA, intravehicle activity, so that's anything inside the spaceship, to EVA suits, which is outside, not just in zero G, but very interested in surface exploration and walking and using these suits for real work. Um, we're looking at ways of testing anybody's technology to give them feedback on how they can either better improve the design or everything ranging from human factors, work in terms of comfort or perceived stress. The overall idea of the entire lab, though, is to help with human performance, make people more efficient, in terms of how much energy they have available to expend, just say to get something fixed, but then also to learn about how we can contribute. So it is possible that some of the projects maybe in the future with when we have graduate students that we might be looking at research technology projects as well. Every test that's conducted, you want to match as many variables as possible to the actual environment that it would be located. So each of these different types of activities have different ways of mapping what's most relevant.
Mhm.
So one of the tests we just did on campus was actually a seated IVA test looking at range of mobility, or the work envelope of just say an astronaut or even a spaceflight participant wearing a pressure suit. We looked at how the differences between wearing a suit and not wearing a suit, and having the suit pressurized or not pressurized. And for the most part, the passengers, when they're in a relative gravity environment, they're just slowly taxing up. Just say it's on Spaceship Two to be launched, and then of course rocketed at 3 Gs, pushed back into their seat, and then weightlessness. So it's a lot of different environments that are happening. But what we're looking at is if the suit needs to be used in an emergency situation, like the cabin depressurizes or something goes wrong, and they need to activate the pressurization of the suit to maintain consciousness and be able to just say it's the pilot actually fly the plane, um, then we just want to know if they're able to reach and control things or not. So that's kind of the first step. The next step would be then to put that into an actual simulator or environment like a cockpit, and seeing if the suit can even fit in there in the first place when it's pressurized, because that's a whole nother problem. So making sure that you're able to actually use your upper body, at least for pilots, is extremely important. So for a spaceflight participant who's paying a lot of money to be up there, a lot of the current profiles are not having them wear spacesuits at all. Um, that's something that I think will be an ongoing discussion with the FAA and safety and everyone else involved. Um, but if they do have a suit, then they need to know how to use it. And for a passenger, they don't necessarily need to have it look like what we would think of a traditional suit with arms and legs and everything else. It might just be an inflatable bubble with oxygen for all we know, just to
Mm-hmm.
get them down safely. And that's kind of I guess you could say, when you look at the big design principles of something like Spaceship Two, is, well, the cabin is that bubble, and we'll get them down. As a whole group versus trying to individualize a suit or not a suit. So that's for just I would say the suborbital frontier. And then when we look at mostly at surface exploration, I mean that's mostly because I have a passion for exploring the moon and Mars environments, and we can do a lot of that, as you mentioned, in the neutral buoyancy lab. And we actually have a summer abroad program in Greece where we wait out the students to the equivalent weighting of what it would feel like to walk on the moon, but underwater. So
Mm-hmm.
on the surface of the Aegean Sea, last summer we had a few students wear weights. We calculated, how much would the Apollo era spacesuit weigh, and figure that equivalency out for mass, and then added that mass to their body, like around the waist. And then also on the back of the scuba tank to change the center of gravity, so they would feel what it would be like to have that kind of offset, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who's been camping with a large backpack knows that it completely changes the way you walk, and how much energy you need to push yourself forward, especially if you're going up a hill or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that, little things like that can help simulate the different issues.
Yeah, that's really cool. So tell me a little bit about this mission that you have coming up. It's a Mars simulation mission out in Utah. You're going to be commander, right, of the mission, of the crew?
Yep.
So what's the focus there? What are you guys going to be looking at?
So the upcoming mission at the Mars Desert Research Station is an all alumni crew of people who have graduated from the International Space University.
Mm-hmm.
So the group actually came together based off of interest from alumni and what projects they might want to test in the field. So we actually have investigators bringing very specific research from either their work or things that they're looking at getting involved with, in using the Mars Desert research station. I almost call it Mars. It's Mars, but it's simulated Mars, and it actually does look a lot like Mars's geology.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're bringing their work there so that they can get an idea of how it interacts with the environment, or how the crew dynamics work in terms of human factors.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got a bit of a mix, I guess you could say, in terms of projects.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an overall specific. Our mission is to do this specific type of geology on this particular Mars mission, but more of bringing together an international and interdisciplinary crew, to see how we can contribute to the big picture of preparing for research on Mars. So I've got 5 projects, possibly a few other smaller outreach ones also in the works, even up to the deadline. So things are a little bit crazy for that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be looking at 2 different dust experiments. One is with the NASA Glenn Research Center, looking at how much dust actually gets into the habitat.
Mm-hmm.
That's important because it gets all over the equipment, and just like at home, if
Yeah.
things get dirty and it starts wearing away things, and obviously you want to preserve your equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I mean, more importantly, because of crew safety. So you don't want all that dust in the air, and you don't want it all over your food, and you don't want to be eating it and ingesting it and breathing it. So dust control is actually really important, even in here on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be looking at how much dust is actually getting in there, what kind of dust. So doing sampling, a little bit of sampling as well. The other dust projects related to Final Frontier Design has EVA TMG gloves. They're basically the outer layer that you would wear, astronauts would wear over their pressure suit.
Mm-hmm.
And so those look like those big white gloves that you may have seen over the astronauts' gear.
Yeah.
And for that, I'm just simply wearing them and testing them in a relevant environment. So we're going to be in the field taking samples, riding ATVs, hammering using different tools. And so all of that activity will wear and tear on these gloves, and so they want to see how it interacts in kind of a simulated environment for the 2 weeks. Um, Another project I've got is on spacesuit mobility. So we're just measuring what is the range of motion of a given, just a simulated spacesuit, so that we can do video capture, not motion capture. So with video capture, we get two-dimensional data on how far can you reach your arm over your head. And with a spacesuit on, or with the the giant bubble helmet, you're obviously not able to reach all that working space up here above your head. So it changes the way you do operations, because maybe you have to move your body around in a different way. Um, it also gives an opportunity for our kind of mission support team to look at these videos on the go and possibly even diagnose problems with, just say there's a problem with the shoulder joint. I like the shoulder. Shoulder is really important for work, so I tend to focus on that. And are there things that can be fixed with their advisement, if you will?
So I noticed in reading the information about past missions, there are some similarities to what is going on the space station right now. For instance, growing plants. I mean, even the lighting that you're using to simulate chlorophyll or the sunlight, the pink light
Yeah.
for the plants, and it seems like you guys have almost, I guess, 100% autonomy, right? If something breaks down or it needs maintenance or whatever, you guys are kind of on your own out there in the habitat, and there's no help. You guys have to figure it out on your own.
Well, um, so I would say that there are lifelines back to Earth with all the principal investigators or co-researchers around the world. What might be the limitation is whether or not we can get a message out to them or not. We know that the bandwidth is limited in terms of both speed and data capacity. So we know that when we need help, we need to be prepared that we might not get a reply possibly for days. I mean, people are working too, so it might not be hot on their radar.
Do you also simulate communications, like the delay of
Yeah.
what it would really take to communicate between Mars and Earth?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of our simulation protocol is that in order to receive and reply messages, there's a 20-minute delay. So if I happen to see a message, just say an email popped up, I might wait 10 minutes before reading it, and then wait 10 minutes before hitting send on whatever my reply is, or a little bit longer to simulate the time it would take me to write the message. But we kind of function like that on Earth anyway. We send emails out, we move on to the next question or task, and then we usually see a reply from whatever that might be later on, and kind of keep plugging away at other things. So there's a way of balancing your workload with the communication delay where that part is actually not that much of a hindrance. The issue is there's no real-time communication with family and friends. And so psychologically, that's actually the harder part of, I would say, a working environment. I guess the other difference is, even though you can send an email, if it's just not, say, emergency, but something that's really important, you can't pick up a phone and call the person and get walked through on how to fix it. So communications need to be really clear and descriptive, and sometimes have photos, like here's what went wrong, here's a photo of that part. Has this happened to you guys before? And so a lot of the investigations do have people that are kind of stationed back home to help them out with their projects. So the students in my lab are kind of my mission support for all the projects that I'm leading. And so when I have questions, I'll send them a message and see if they can help me solve the problem. And I'll also obviously contact the other people we're involved with. So like the gloves, I would contact Final Frontier Design and my students, and then wait and see what kind of replies I get. But you're right. It's possible that whatever the problem is, we might have to solve all those things in the field to make progress and move on. And with a real Mars mission, the duration on the surface would be a lot longer. So the patience level would have to be very high, I guess, in terms of the work that you're doing, unless, of course, it was something that related to life support or emergencies or anything along those lines.
Right. So tell me a little bit about Yuri's Night. What type of events do you have? To what extent? I see it's international.
Yep.
And what your goals are.
Yuris Night is really focused on bringing to get people together to understand our history of spaceflight, where we are now in terms of the different projects, and where we're going. What our future is in terms of exploration. So the events are really all encompassing, all inclusive, all ages, all demographics. We're trying to really create something that anyone can get involved with. Uh, the focus is, originally the focus and the vision was to bring together artists and engineers to highlight how cool space is and really help tell the story of what's happening. So all those within, the goals of Yuris Night, and of course educating the public about human spaceflight, are all paramount. The types of events, again, completely range. There's been things that have been, two people watching a movie or having dinner together and having a toast and calling it a Yuris Night. And then on the other end of the extreme, there's 10,000 people, in a hangar at NASA Ames, dancing to Pharrell and Nerd and other large headliners at NASA when they ran it at NASA Ames 5 years ago or so. So I think the big highlights are usually, the ones you see that are very picturesque with actual space locations, to backyard star parties with schools around the world, kids doing little stomp rocket activities and understanding that humans first entered space on this date, and people are all celebrating it around the world. It has a very motivating and inspiring connection, knowing that other people are also doing the same thing as you. Other events I've run, I've done everything from a party at a bar with bands and free music, to astronomy days at planetariums, to just doing a talk to families and museums as well. It really ranges, and personally I like to do something that's, I would say, more fun for me, like the 21 plus crowd, and something that's for the next generation K through 12 students as well. So, I mean, everyone knows that the retention for math, science, technology, and the dropout of that, or that interest, occurs somewhere around 5th or 6th grade. So, if people are looking to create events and they're not really sure, who to focus on or which age group to help, that's, a suggestion right there. So how can you help that group and see if you can keep them interested in space and the technologies and everything else. And of course, space is open for everyone. It's not just STEM fields; it's all the fields. Arts. Without arts, we wouldn't tell our story, and there would be no funding. So, all the people who are, I'm an engineer, but I understand the storyline side of things, and without having that, we're all not going to make that progress forward. So it's really important that all these fields are represented. And the same goes for, the future colonies on Mars, is that you want people who can share the story or record history, or really hit all the other disciplines that are really important.
Speaking of history, for those who do not know, who
Oh,
is
yeah,
Yuri, and the significance of the anniversary of this evening that you
sure.
celebrate?
So on April 12th, 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first human in space. He blasted off, obviously the first cosmonaut, but was really an ambassador for everyone here on Earth. 20 years later, it was actually the first space shuttle flight, 1981, also on the same date, April 12th. And so the founders of Yuris Night, took this cosmic coincidence of a date and tried to have a focal point for how do we bring people together to celebrate human spaceflight. And so in 2001, April 12th, it was the first Yuris Night. So now around the world, people are celebrating roughly on April 12th. Sometimes it's a few days before, a few days after, because of, sometimes you have to have a weekend event, human spaceflight, and it's pretty exciting to be a part of that.
So whoever all over the world is interested in finding out an event that's near them, they can just go to the site www.Yuri'sNight.net, and they can find out all kinds of information of how they can attend, or be involved, or even donate to the organization as well.
Yeah, that's right. So the Yuris Night organization is a 501c3 nonprofit based technically in California, although our you could say our nonprofit staff is across the U.S. and the world. And the main focus of that global executive team is to connect all these events around the world
Mm-hmm.
with our website, through different resources that we help find with, just say, sponsorships or even fun things to hand out at events.
Mm-hmm.
So we have our, our infrastructure to keep that running, and so that's why people can kind of donate to help with that. And being across social media, we're pretty active in terms of being able to post on almost all the different platforms that are used today.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's sometimes we'd like to, pop out and push an ad so people are able to see it in a timely manner. For the most part, the entire Yuris Night team is all volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no paid staff. It's not like a nonprofit that's functioning off of 2 or 3 people that are, are salaried employees. Although that would be a great vision for the future of Yuris Night, is, having an actual headquarters and an office, and those 2 or 3 people that are dedicated and focused on helping with the overall growth of everything else.
In reading your biography, your life so far has been packed chock full with so much. I mean, not only your education, but your participation in different organizations and studies, these Mars missions.
Yeah.
And yet you still find time for your family. You find time to escape to your happy place. There's some pictures of you out hiking near caverns and whatnot. You dabble into photography, your volunteerism. How do you manage? How do you find a happy medium? Because that's we're the thing of that people talk about now is work-life balance and trying to balance everything out. How do you do that?
Well, I guess the first spoiler is that to have a happy medium doesn't mean that you have to be happy all the time. This week is, I would say, a very stressful week because I'm leaving for Mars, and there's proposals due. I have classes to take care of. I have just normal family stuff and other family things happening. So this week in particular is a little bit crazy. But it's being aware that you're going to have weeks like that, and when they might occur is how you can help prepare for them, because it's ramping up, so you need to put in time on other things beforehand. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of time management. Mm-hmm. And awareness. You need to be aware of what your personal interests are. I make sure I play hockey every week. That's I'm kind of like guaranteeing that I get that hour and a bit of exercise. Mm-hmm. I'd like to play more than once a week, but that's again part of the balance. Mm-hmm. And someone from the X-Prize Foundation, Greg Marinak, he had great advice for me when I was out there the first time for my master's. He said multitasking makes you stupid. Mm-hmm. And I almost fully agree that
sometimes
you need
it's
to
a
kind
necessity, right?
Yeah, you need to kind of pick which things you're going to focus on. You can't focus on a whole ton of things at once, but you can kind of pick the main things that really drive you and that you find that you get the most benefit out of for your personal well-being as well. Mm-hmm. So I've been involved with a bunch of different groups like AIAA, and for that I'm focused more on, I would say, the research side and the for conferences and our technical committee and how I can contribute on that level. Mm-hmm. And so it's it's a smaller commitment, and the same with the International Astronautical Federation. I'm involved with 2 or 3 different committees, again, trying to help the overall goals of space education and pushing things forward. But I'm fully aware of how much time each of those things take. Mm-hmm. And then Yuris Night is kind of the, I would say, the wild card, because it could go anywhere from a little bit of time to all the time. Mm-hmm. And again, that ramps up. So my family knows that as we approach April 12th, I start getting a little bit, frantic on taking care of a bunch of extra tasks or fires that need to be put out. Yeah. So everyone's aware of it. It's not a personal thing. It's more of a group communication thing as well. Right. But the key is to do things that you're passionate about, because if you really enjoy them, you'll find ways of putting them into your lifestyle. And you just need to be aware that your work-life balance is a balance not of just your life, but of the people directly around you. So if that's your immediate family or your close friends, or even colleagues that you would like to maintain a good collaboration working environment with. Those are all things that you need to be sensitive to and do your, I guess you could say, your due diligence in terms of making sure those things are working as well.
That's
And
good
then,
points and great
yeah,
advice, certainly.
yeah,
And you're making it work, so that's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Um, just one more question on a personal note.
Okay.
Who would you like to meet that you haven't met yet? Somebody that inspires you, or a hero, or somebody you look up to in your field of study or otherwise. And what would you ask them?
I want to meet the first Mars astronaut. So that can be. We never said it. We said dead or alive. We didn't say if it was future or current or
Yeah,
past
that
tense.
certainly.
So I definitely would like to hang out with that person a little bit and learn about their experience.
So, what's the first question you would ask the Mars astronaut?
First Mars. Let's see.
What intrigues you the most? What do you are
Yeah.
really looking forward to finding out about Mars?
Yeah. I thought of an answer, but I think I have a little bit more based off of that. But the first thing I would ask them post mission would be, what was the favorite photo that you took, and why, and what's the story behind it?
Uh-huh.
Because that the photos have a direct attachment to our emotions, and if you just saw someone's photo and you're looking at it, you'd be like, oh, that's interesting, or that's a really good photo, or I don't get it, why is this photo even on this person's wall? And then
Mm-hmm.
you ask them about it, and it opens up a whole emotional story. And I think that's way more interesting than just the best photo ever taken in the universe kind of thing.
Right.
um, so I think it'd be something related to that. The personal journey, personal highlights are always interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for
Yeah,
taking the time to chat with me. I hope that the followers really take something away, something that they've learned new, or maybe have inspired them, or maybe their children
yeah.
to follow a certain path similar to yours. And good luck to you on your mission coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.